The arrival of a new brand is always exciting in any market, and in India we've been used to that for some time now. But when it comes to this particular brand, the excitement reaches a different kind of level because it's also the arrival of a major automotive group for the first time in its true form here in India. I am, of course, talking about PSA, and joining me now to talk about that and everything that follows from here on is Mr. Carlos Tavares, who is the CEO of Groupe PSA. Thank you.
Hello, good afternoon.
And it's great to see you back here in India after a long
pleasure.
time. And of course, getting to spend time with you. Appreciate it. What I said, it sounds, of course, nice to say it like that, but it is true in many ways. I mean, it's that one big thing that we've been waiting for, because it is that one big automotive group that was sort of missing. You have announced very early on the clear intention of what you want to do here. Of late, we've got more clarity on that, with Citroen now being announced as the brand. But the obvious question, I mean, the importance of India in the long term for PSA's future growth strategy.
Well, India is paramount for our overseas development. First of all, because it's a highly demanding market. And of course, we have opportunities with many of our brands, but we also know that the Indian consumer is extremely demanding, which is something that is challenging us, and we like that. We like to be challenged, and we like to progress and push the limits to make our customers happy. This is the reason we have selected Citroën as a highly human-centric brand, very much focused on being a trendy, cool, comfortable, and smart brand. And we believe that this is the best brand, the warmest brand we have to delight our Indian consumers. So we are very pleased, and we are here for the long term. We'll take our time. This is a long-term commitment. We have made frugal investments to make sure that we keep the business plan in the black, so that as long as we are in the black, we can continue to progress, improve our operations, improve the way we service our customers, and improve the way we plan for our cars.
Which actually leads me straight to the next point, which is about the necessity of the joint ventures with Hindustan Motors. One understands, of course, the logic of why you did it, but could you have done it without that, you think, or maybe not as quickly?
Well, possibly yes, but that was not our choice. We believe that in such a highly specific market, it's better to have a partner that helps us to avoid the basic mistakes. Of course, big corporations like ours can make basic mistakes, and we certainly want to avoid that for the best benefit of our Indian consumers, and also to make sure that we start from a manufacturing footprint that already exists, which means that we can protect our business plan to keep it in the black, and hence give ourselves more time to progress in the marketplace and do the right things. So we are very pleased. In fact, we are blessed with our partnership with CK Birla. We think it's absolutely the right partner for us. We already have two plants in India, one for powertrain and another one for vehicles. By the way, we are already exporting from our powertrain plant in Hosur to the rest of the world, basically here gearboxes for Europe. And we are very pleased with what we are right now doing. So, no, I think it's a must for us if we want to avoid basic mistakes.
Going back several years now, I mean, even at the time when in your previous role, when I guess we last had you on camera on our channel, at the time, it's easy to talk about what was happening in the market then, because it was the conversation was really about potential. A lot has happened since then in terms of the market proving to be more complex, more complicated, and perhaps there's been a few other things that have kind of contributed to those targets that were being talked about then not really sort of being realized today. Is it better in a way to have that perspective, to have that experience that you've seen for some of the other brands and the tough journey, to be able to step in at this time and say, all right, we kind of know what not to do?
Well, see,
I don't mean to be flippant, but
no,
you see why I'm asking
it's a great point. It's a great point. There is not a good timing and a bad timing to come into a market. The reality is that when you plan for entering a new market, like the one we have here in India with the Citroen brand, you cannot plan only for one product. And in this specific case for India, we are planning for 4 products in 4 years in a row, which means this is a huge amount of work to be prepared, a huge amount of engineering, a huge amount of sourcing, a huge amount of planning, a huge amount of partnerships with our dealers, with our business partners. And this amount of work is not very much visible because we have been working in this program for the last 3 years. So it's 3 years of underground work to come up with today's brand introduction in India. So this is what I think is what needs to be done. Of course, in the meanwhile, the markets are very volatile. And you cannot predict volatility of the markets by nature, of course. As we cannot predict the volatility of the markets, then we just do whatever we need to do and do the right things right, and we see what happens next. So yes, the markets will be volatile. Yes, the markets can go up, can go down. But anyway, as we are here for the long term, when you look at it from a several decades perspective, the point of introduction doesn't matter as long as you keep a very low break-even point of the operations. If you keep a very low break-even point of your operations in a given market, then you can face ups and downs, you can face headwinds, you can face good news and bad news, because you always keep your operations in the black, so you can always continue to move forward, even if, of course, from time to time you can be frustrated by some headwinds.
All right. Sorry about that. I mean, you partially answered what I was going to ask you about between the time you sort of green-lighted internally the India plan and today. Of course, you're right. The market's been extremely volatile, very unpredictable, and almost scary in some senses. But keep the eye on the long-term price. I get that. Having said that, when you talk about a low break-even point, how do you define that? Does it come from conservative volume or share targets? Does it come from having a very healthy export plan from day one? Now, I know you'll say it's both, but what's at the heart of it, let's say?
Well, it's a lot of those things, but let me give you some examples. If we consider that we have in India a competitive supplier base, it is quite clear that if you start sourcing parts in India, exporting for the rest of the world, the cost reductions that you are going to create are already paying for the local investments eventually that you'll have to do. If I take the example of our POWERTRAIN plant in Hosur, basically this investment is already paid by the cost reductions that we are able to generate compared to other sourcings in the world, which then means that by itself, this specific investment is self-sustained. So I'll put it there. And at the same time, I'm going to use it to make a deep localization for the products I want to manufacture in India for the Indian market. In the same way, if I start by saying yes to my people telling me we want a big greenfield plant, I said no, I want a small brownfield plant. It's going to be much less investment at the beginning, but then I will keep my business plan in the black, and if it is successful, of course, I'm going to saturate the plant. I will make another one. So what that means is scalability and keeping a low break-even point with the frugal investments at the beginning gives you a much longer term perspective, because then you go step by step, but you always keep your operations in the black. So those are two examples, and of course, if I don't spend here 200 expatriates, it will also reduce my costs. So I want to use my local Indian talent to make things even more efficient. It's a long list of things you can do to keep things aligned. It's not easy, of course, and we don't always succeed. From time to time we fail, from time to time we succeed. But at least I think we have a very Indian vision of frugality and scalability that is the best way to plan for the long term.
Is that kind of new for PSA? I mean, it's uncharted territory, because I know you are going into several new markets this year, starting this year. But that kind of vision, which you're calling an Indian vision, is that new territory, you think, for PSA?
I think it's new for the industry. Let me give you another example.
Others claim to have tried that. That's why I ask.
Well, perhaps they succeeded, by the way. And that's good. That's good if they succeeded. If not, then we have a problem. But you see, let's take another example. I was announcing the other day that we are going to bring the Peugeot brand to North America. And I also announced that we bring the Peugeot brand to North America, but we will not build a plant over there. We'll start with sourcing our cars from China and or Europe. Why? For the same reason. If I go and start by putting huge amount of investment on the table, then I will become extremely dependent on the volume growth, which means I will have to push the metal in the market, which possibly could happen with a lot of incentives, which then means a very poor profitability, and then everything goes south instead of starting to be a virtuous circle. So this is where we are. Anyway, it's not rocket science. It's all about having good sense, good judgment about what is really the core of what you need, what is a waste, and you should get rid of it. Align all the stars in the center, use the local talents, use the local cost competitiveness of where you are doing your business, have the right partners to avoid basic mistakes, and listen to the consumer. Try to delight the consumer so that the growth is always the result of a well-done job and not a goal by itself.
The conservatism that you then point at, which is obviously good from a business perspective, from a strategy perspective as well. Three things that come to mind straight away. You've talked about 100,000 cars in the first phase, as it were. You have talked about the fact that there will be a significant interest from some of your concerns around the world who will probably want some of the cars that are built in India for their markets, which means that that's already planned into the development of those models, that they'll have appeal across markets. And then you've also spoken about going about and targeting what I know people are calling a small 2% market share, but a significant number nevertheless. How does 100,000 add up to all of those plans together? Because if there's exports and robust sales in India, how do the two add up?
It's very simple. I want my people to come back to me to say that we don't have enough capacity. This is something we know how to manage.
Yeah.
I want them to come back to me and say, hey, we don't have enough capacity, please build more. And when we will be in that position, then we are safe, because we know that additional capacity will really be needed and will not be idle if we just put it up front and then pray for the best. The competitiveness of the markets in which we are now operating cannot afford anymore to invest upfront the capacities and then pray for the best. Because of everything we said, competitiveness of the markets, the complexity of the business models, the volatility of the markets, the fact that the world trade is going backwards, a lot of new regulations are popping up that no one could predict. So we need to realize that the automotive industry in the world is becoming a chaos. And because of this chaotic situation, we need to be planning in a conservative way.
The three cars you showed us in that picture, which were covered, of course, which will come 2021, 22 and 23 here in India, and which have this great export potential, as you put it. Is it safe to assume that they don't currently exist in the Citroen portfolio anywhere?
Yes, it is.
All right, and so what part of that development and then subsequent testing prior to launch, or proving, let's say, will happen in India?
Well, most of it, 90% of it, will be happening in India, and then we will have to validate in the destination markets what is specific to their product adaptations, of course. But each of those products will be validated finally in their destination markets, but the core engineering will be made here.
Okay, so one final point then as we wrap this up. Both from the perspective of these three products, as well as what's of course happening with all the markets that you're operating in, and I'm talking about, of course, this little bit of an unknown. What happens with electric, what happens with some of the semi-autonomous features that are coming in, and regulations, as you put it. How much of that gets protected in this plan?
Well, in our industry...
Because in India, for sure, we have no idea where it's going.
Well, in Europe, we don't have an idea either. I mean, let's be honest.
Yeah, absolutely.
This is chaos.
Yeah.
Let's be honest.
Yeah.
It's chaos. You see, regulations are popping up. I'm not talking even about automotive bans in some cities. One region of the world wants to go this way, the other one goes this way. There is no alignment between the energy production and the automotive mobility devices. No, this is chaos, and we really have to be very thoughtful in the way we do things and plan for different kinds of scenarios. At the end of the day, the car companies right now are in a mode where either you bet on a certain technology and you bet the house on it, or you try to have flexible strategies like the one we have with the multi-energy platforms we have that can be petrol, diesel, electric, or plug-in hybrid powered. And this is the direction we have taken, is we have an engineering capability to make it flexible in terms of multi-energy platforms. We have developed our in-house technology, both for the electric vehicle powertrains, plug-in hybrid powertrains. We have, of course, excellent diesel engines, excellent petrol engines. We were awarded 4 years in a row the best engine in terms of the EB turbo engine. So we are blessed with all of those assets, and we are going to use it in a competitive way to adapt to a highly chaotic world, which of course we do not control.
So if you want to move quickly on electric, then you can still do that in India, you think? I don't expect you to do it in the next 1 or 2 years, of course.
It's absolutely possible. We have all the technology we need, of course. It's possible. It's something that we will consider if the market conditions are supportive of that.
Can't wait to see all of it rolling out. You know why, of course. You know where I'm coming from on that. Thank you for your time. And
My pleasure.
Pleasure to have the brand here and, of course, you as well. Thank you.
Thank you for the chat. See you. Thank you.